Okay guys, I ain't gonna lie, this miniature absolutely broke me. However, join me in this video as I share some hints, tips, techniques and theories on how I painted up this amazing miniature. You don't want to miss this one, so let's delve into Fulgrim Transfigured. So let me start off by saying this is not going to be my usual typical step-by-step guide on how I painted up a miniature, because if I did it for this, we'd literally be sat here for hours. However, I will be putting a more in-depth guide for the people that are probably going to be painting Fulgrim up and want a more in-depth step-by-step guide. However, I think it's crucial that you watch this video because I'm literally going to be speaking through my ideas, philosophies and theories on how I painted up this miniature. And I really do think that, you know, delving into my brain and my actual painting process and the thoughts that I go through will really benefit you onto like your miniature painting, because a lot of the techniques and stuff that you learn in this video you'll be able to apply into your other miniature painting. But don't worry, I will actually be sharing a lot of the steps and some of the colors that I do use in the video, but more like the intricate parts and some of the main details I won't actually be delving too much into. Like I said, it'd go on forever, but it will be a multi-part tutorial over on my Patreon when that does launch. So like I said at the beginning, this miniature did absolutely break me to the point where I shelved it for quite some time and then revisited it and come back to it. And it was a really challenging miniature, from like even just the build to like cleaning it up and putting it together. And if you do want to learn more about that, you know, like the sub assemblies and stuff, there is a video already on my channel that I filmed a while back. So if you do want to learn, you know, like hints and tips on how to build him and stuff, you can actually go back and watch that video. And also like the painting for it, this is the second time that I've actually painted this Fulgrim model. So I painted him up originally and I think I went too much into it, which is why I want to speak a little bit about processes, because for me, I was trying to like plan it. You know, I really do advise, you know, like planning your painting processes and maybe writing stuff down. That can really help. However, sometimes for me, I get a little bit, I think it's because I've got ADHD, I delve too much into it and I overwhelm myself, and I think that's what put me off when I started painting it, you know, and it was going more towards the box art and it weren't really my little twist on it, and I think that's why I shelved it for quite some time. And what I did in the end is I find sometimes that if I don't have a plan and I just sit down and get on with it, sometimes that gets me my best painting like jobs. And that's like how I find sometimes that I really find myself in the miniature as I'm going along and doing it, and that's sort of what I want to go through in this video and the reasons why I did certain things. However, you know, I always do recommend a little bit of planning, and you know, like maybe if you want to do certain colors or you've seen certain things, then definitely the planning can come into it. But for me, originally I think I went overboard, which is hence the reason why I stripped it, primed him back up and started again. So swiftly moving on to the actual painting process, and like I've said, you know, like base coating and priming up again. Obviously you can see here I've primed him in black and then given it a zenithal prime of like the standard grey. I use colour forge sprays. I know they're not available all over in the world, but you know, if you've got access to them, then definitely get them. And I think if I were to do this again, or if I actually had it, I know I'm working my way around here with an airbrush with the purple. I think, you know, like thinking forward, if I were going to do this again, I would probably start using the primer of the purple. And I know Colourforge have some like equivalents of them for the like Nagaroth Night. I'm not sure if Citadel do them, but if you can get a rattle can with like this like dark purple and prime it in that, then I'd highly recommend doing that, because a lot of it is going to be that standard like base coat colour. And that's why I'm using this, I think I use Nagaroth Night or Basilicanum purple. Don't ask me to pronounce them, I'll put the colours in the actual video itself. And again, this video is very airbrushy and there's a lot of back and forth, and when I, you know, like when I'm painting for me and like for like my display pieces, a lot of people think, you know, it's like base coat, layer paint and highlight, and a lot of people think you have to paint that way, and you don't. I go back and forth so much, it's unreal, which you'll see as we get into the video. You know, like I'll base everything. So what I'm doing here is, because of the skin color, I want like the shadows to be a purple, so I'm sort of killing two birds with one stone, which is why I'm going around and spraying everything purple up like on the arms and everything. But again, if you want to save time, you can just literally prime it in the purple itself. And I know at this point, 4 minutes in, probably because I'm using an airbrush, we've already lost the airbrush police, and don't think that you've got to have an airbrush for this. And the only reason I'm using airbrush is because it's such a big miniature and it is going to help kill a lot of time. You could do this via brush. There's plenty of tutorials out there. I know Richard Gray's done this in just painting it up, you know, just with a standard brush, but there's a lot of dry brushing and airbrushing in this, and there's nothing to stop you using dry brushing techniques as well with this like same colors that I use to be able to achieve similar, or if not the same, results. Now the reason I like to use an airbrush, especially when it comes to the skin, is because I love like the smoothness of it. I love like that smoothness that the airbrush gives you, especially for the skin, and that's what I'm doing for this miniature itself. So for the skin, originally I went at like the box art style, where it is a little bit more of a fleshy colour. However, because he's like a demon and he's a little bit more of like a Slanesh, I didn't want that. I wanted a bit more of like a vampiric looking skin. So what I did is obviously like I've base coated everything in the purple, and then I'm sort of doing like a zenithal to achieve my skin tones. And again, all colours will be on the screen, and I'm just applying like a lighter purpley, like a bleachy flesh tony colour over top in like a zenithal, just catching those raised edges. And then I step it up to a Tamiya one, which is a little bit more of a fleshy colour, and I just fire this in selective areas. Now when you put this through an airbrush, it goes on a little bit brighter. Now the more I add of it, the more of the flesh colour it will go, but when you first catch those edges, it goes more like a highlight of the original colour. And because it's mixing with that colour underneath and showing through, because of the Tamiya paints, the like the really smooth, I get that extra smoothness for the skin tone, and again it just takes everything that little bit brighter. Now I do go back in there a little bit later on with like some purples if you want to, you know, reinforce those shadows on the skin, like on the side of his face like I do. Then I fire it upwards from like the opposite angle of the zenithal to create those extra shadows. And I even think I got some, because I use inks a lot, you'll see in my video that I use like the Citadel washes and the inks, or even contrast paints to be able to create extra shadows to get that translucency. And for this, on the skin in select areas, just to create that a little bit more of like mysticky, like Slaneshi demony stuff, if that's even a thing. Then I just fired a little bit of like a blue into like the shadow areas, just to make things pop and just have a little bit of tonal difference.
Hey guys, Deadpool here. I just wanted to say that all of you watching right now should hit that like button. Also, if you're not already a subscriber, then what the fuck are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button like the Emperor hit Horus's face. Anyway, have a great day and enjoy the video.
Now moving on to the actual, like, his armour, if you want to call it his armour, like the main purple part of him. Because we've just done the skin, what I did, and you know, I think it's important that I tell you about this process, is because we've already got that base layer down, what I do is go back to the original colour, because obviously I've naturally got some overspray, and a miniature of this size and like intricacy, you're naturally going to get some overspray. So I'm just tidying up first of all those areas and just making sure that that's gone back to its original colour. And now for the purple itself, I wanted like a really nice warmish purple. And if you see my old like Emperor's Children video, what I did with the contrast paints, I'm going to use a very similar process on this. It's not exactly the same, but the, you know, like the end result is very similar. So I got some Fulgrim pink and like a zenithally and just selective areas. I just painted those in as though it was like the highlight, which is going to be our highlight section on like his purple armor itself. So I just literally went in and sprayed all those areas of the highlights in that Fulgrim pink, and then it does look a bit like wishy-washy, and it's very similar to the actual skin tone itself. But the beauty now is we're going to get the contrast paint Voluptuous Pink. It's a very posh name, Voluptuous Pink, and I'm just going to go over all those areas that we've just done. So all the purple areas, and what it's going to do is it's going to go over top of that like Fulgrim pink that I've just go on. It's going to push it back down a bit, add a lot more saturation, and because it's like a pinky purpley colour, it's really going to leave like a really nice warm tone as well. And again, going back to like what I said earlier, as in like if I were to do this again, I'd prime it all back in purple. As you'll see in the video that I did actually go in there, any scales and stuff, I actually hit them with the purple as well, because that's sort of going to act as our base tone before we move on a little bit later on. And there's nothing as well, what I did something as well, like I said, but I switched between airbrushing and dry brushing, and once I'd done that Fulgrim pink as the highlights, I actually did dry brush some onto to catch some of those raised edges. At first it's going to be a little bit off-putting because you're going to catch in all the gold trim and stuff, but trust me, as we go through the painting process, it's all going to come and tie together once you've put that contrast paint on and start painting all your other sections. Now is the painstaking task of painting all of Fulgrim's gold in his gold trim, and you know this is going to take a while, so really take your time with this. You might want to put an evening to one side to get through all his gold trims. It is literally going to take you quite a lot of time. And for this I used Pro Acryl Bronze, and you know it's not really a bronzy colour, it's more of like a really nice rich warm gold, which I thought would fit Fulgrim perfectly for that like Slaneshi demony sort of look. And this is all the bulk areas on his armor I used the bronze for, so that's all his armor pieces. However, the gold for his weapons I actually used AK Rusty Gold, just to give a little bit of difference between those two golds. And for his weapons, for the Rusty Gold, I went in there and gave them a little wash over with Rattling Grime to give it that aged like grimdarky dirty look, and all the gold on his armor I actually gave that a wash of Agrax Earthshade to keep that nice warm tone. Fulgrim also does have a ton of scales all over his body, and for this I used a mix of purples, blues and greys to achieve, you know, like the highlights and stuff like that. So starting off with like a bit of a dull purple, I gave the, you know, like the entire scales an entire dry brush of like a purple. And the reason for that, you know, you could go in there and paint them individually if you wanted to do that, but you know, it's not really a main function of the miniature itself, or like a main feature that people's eyes are going to be drawn to. So for me, I just went over and dry brushed them, and it did the job. It catched all those raised edges. And because I'm mixing a bit of blue in there as well for some of the highlights, and mixing a bit of grey in as well for like where the main highlights would be, for me it just created a little bit of, as you know, like scales are a bit, it's got like a bit of a tonal difference going throughout his scales, and again leaned more into that like Slaneshi demonic style, to be able to do that. And then obviously he's got like a tail hook and stuff, and you can paint these, you know, whatever colour you want. And for like his tail, I think airbrushed like a burgundy reddy colour. And then for like his hook itself, I actually dry brushed some like reds and like a little bit of orange, just as though, I call it his stinger. He's got like a little stinger on the end of his tail, not something you want to be smacked by. But yeah, so just work your way around all your scales, and again, you can get creative with this. If you want to do them a different colour, you're more than welcome to do a different colour. For his weapons, obviously I've airbrushed these in like a really dark blacky silver, and then for like some highlights I just literally airbrushed some Vallejo silver over the top of it. And then after, you know, a little bit later on when I've done all my washes and stuff like that, I can dry brush them in that silver again just to fetch everything out. Now, one thing I did actually add to the weapons themselves to give them a little bit more Slaneshi, Fulgrimy style is I airbrushed some purple Magos purple contrast paint in there as well, just to, you know, like lighten it up, and including some of the gold on his weapons as well. I even went in there and did some of the purple. And again, for like your golds and your metallics, for when it comes to highlighting those and dry brushing them, I've just given everything I think it's a scale code 75 Peridot Alchemy, and I use that for both the actual armor and the actual weapons themselves. But because of that base layer, that's going to give you that nice little separation between them both. And he's got like a bit of a wing Aquila going up onto his chest, and again, that's where I also sprayed some of the purple. Also, after I'd done his hair in like various greys, building up and dry brushing up to white, one thing I really wanted to add to Fulgrim using that same Magos purple as what we've just used on the like wing chest piece is right at the back of his hair is always like dyed, or the tips of his hair have turned a little bit purple. I also just airbrushed a little bit onto the of the contrast paint onto the actual back of the hair itself, and for me it just added that nice little bit more of a twist and something else visually to look at on the back of his hair. And again, I think it's important to grind, you know, when you're doing these little details on miniatures, is just thinking, you know, what's one little thing I can add to tie it into miniature, what's another little thing I can add just to make it a little bit different to what we usually see, and make it pop. Also staying within the lore and stuff like that, because, you know, we've got like these really cool looking dreadlocks, and sometimes they can just look a little bit boring on their own, but adding these sorts of little twists and stuff can really fetch our miniatures to life. One extra little detail I added just to, you know, make everything pop and add some contrast to the actual miniature itself and give me some like panel lining, you know, break up them scales and stuff a little bit, is I used Villainy Inks Ichor of the Damned, which is a black enamel, and also this is going to push it towards that grimdark look, which I sort of wanted to stay in the grimdark universe, which is, you know, why I'm using like desaturated colours and ways that I'm actually applying that paint. You know, I didn't want everything to be, you know, like too bright and over the top. You know, I still want it to be more like my style with like the grimdark look, and that's what this is going to do. So I just added a little bit of that all over the miniature and just, you know, like make areas pop a little bit more and add a little bit more contrast. And, you know, I just used mineral spirits and a cotton bud to remove it into those areas. Now, speaking of enamels and stuff, we're going to jump on over to the wings because they are a crucial part of this miniature. So let's jump over to the wings and I'll speak about how I created those. So the wings are absolutely monstrous in size. You know, if you these wings just on their own, not with the body, it's actually taller and bigger than Angra. And I think if you stand it up at the side of like one of the knights, it's like a similar size to that. So the wings are literally like, they make the miniature like 3 times as big as what it is just for the body that we've been painting alone. However, for the wings, there's a lot of dry brushing involved in this because there's a lot of details that we want to be able to pick out on the miniature. Now, using a mix of like Rakarth flesh and adding like some other like purple tones and stuff, you just want to start to build up, you know, to like a brightness that you're sort of happy with. I think they call like these the wing membranes. Is it the membranes? It might not be the membranes, but it's like the main inside parts of the wings. And then what I did is, for the brighter colors, you want to be paying attention to light placement. So, you know, I'm going to make certain sections that little bit brighter as well, and then I'm going to go to my actual airbrush. And again, I know when I go to like these fleshy colors and stuff, you'll see in a lot of my videos that I actually use like inks and contrast paints. So I've got like a mix of purples and some actual Caribou Crimson, and I'm just firing these into like the shadow areas and also like the delicate wing membraney bits, like the clawy bits will actually hold the wings together, like the fingertip parts, and go in there. And you'll see in video, I actually spilled my pot. Damn, I'm gonna go get me a new pot of Caribou Crimson. But once I'd done that, is I went, because I wanted them to look a little bit more like grimdarky and fleshy, and, you know, if you've seen me use the new Villainy Inks range, I've started to use some of their enamels, and especially one of their Carrion Crimson ranges is really good for this. So I'm just applying it into certain areas, also with a Colia Green, just to break it up a little bit and add a little bit more visual interest to the miniature itself around like the veins and stuff. And I do go back and forth with this, and also with, you know, because I don't want it to be too grimdarky matte, so I might go in there and spray some more of the red, but this is just to add a little bit more like interest to it. And I also spray a little bit of this round, like on his back he's got these little holes and stuff, and actually do spray it into them as well. But there's nothing wrong with literally going back and forth with your colours and enamels and washes to get that desired look. And I even think like halfway through it, I even went from above with the Zenithal with one of my like original purple colours, just to reinforce some of those like shadow areas and stuff like that. But, you know, get creative with this. If you want a bit more like it is on the box art with the fleshy colours, just switch out, you know, like your dry brushing colours and stuff for like a more of a flesh tone if you're wanting to achieve more like a fleshy colour. Now Fulgrim has a myriad of these little jewels and gems scattered around his armour and his body, and even on some of the clothing. Now I want to teach you a technique, so if you don't want to do them like the box art where they're green, or if you want to do them like I've done, then you can do that. Or the reason that I'm going to teach it this way is because once we've applied this like base, then you can literally apply any colour contrast paint over the top, so literally any colour you want to get your desired colour for your gem. So we're going to start off with like a dull grey, so it's like a really dark black grey as a base coat, and then we're going to go to like a lighter grey, just mixing a little bit, 50-50 each up at a time. Take your time with these gems, and you want to create like a half of a C at the bottom and then a dot at the top, and you want to start to work these up towards white. So making sure that you've got like your dark as an overall, then at the bottom like a little half moon shape, you want to start building them up towards like a really bright grey, and then a white dot at the top. Then you can apply any contrast paint that you want over the top, for whether it be a red, a green, a yellow, an orange, a purple, whatever you want. I used Pterodon turquoise, which is like a nice contrasting bluey green turquoisey colour to the armour, and then once that's dried, just give it one last little white dot at the top. And I also gave it each and every single one of them a little gloss varnish over it. Next up is basing. It was quite simple, even though there's quite a lot of detail on this base. I literally like went around with some browns and got like some limestoney colours and dry brush them onto all the different areas and give it a little wash with like streak and grime and some other enamels, just to give it that more like grimdarky, earthy look. And then I went to kraut cover as some scatter pieces. So for this I used Runes of Persistence and Copious Earth. Now if you've don't know much about kraut cover and want to learn more about them, my latest video that I did before this, you can go out and check that. Links will be in the description below if you want to learn more about some amazing basing tools. And I just secured these into place using their kraut fixer. Now I know there's a lot of the details that we've missed in this video, and we will get more into the intricacies in the broken down stages, more of the step-by-step episodes that will be released on Patreon once that launches. So for everyone that's interested in that and wants to know when that's launched, then please make sure you are hitting that subscribe button to keep up to date with all the news and all that sort of good stuff. But I hope you've got something from this video. I hope you've been able to take something away of it, whether it's been like the process or the ways that I do certain things, or even just like a quick look into my head and why I'm trying to build up these like characters and put my own little twist and story onto them, such as like the purple in the hair and stuff. But again, we will get more into all the intricacies in that more in-depth video. But again, I hope you have enjoyed this video. It's been an absolute blast to paint this. I really love this miniature, but my god, has it been a pain in my backside. Honestly, I nearly quit painting. I were literally that far from throwing it in the bin. I'd had enough of it. But if it weren't for the fact that it costs a lot of money, then that's probably the only reason that I've painted it. But again, if you've got any questions about Fulgrim, if you want to know anything else about it, I've got a couple more videos on Fulgrim from previously, from like an unboxing to a build guide. And I'd really, if you're serious about this miniature and you want to go and get it, then please go and check out that build guide after this, because you're really going to pick up some tips and stuff from that video. Really quickly as well, before we end the video, I now have this buy me a coffee thing set up. I don't even like coffee, so we're going to call it Paint Fuel. So if you do want to support me and just give me a little thanks or anything, you can just do that by liking and being a subscriber. However, if you do want to support me a little bit further and this channel and keep me going, then you can also check out the buy me a coffee in the link in the description below. And again, guys, thank you so much for coming along and let me know what you think. If you want to go and check out all the pictures of this amazing piece, I always post a lot of miniatures on there that you'd never really see on my YouTube as well, so please go and check me out on Instagram. And yeah, until next time, guys, I'll catch you in my next video, because yes, we have got Lion L. Johnson coming up very soon. I'm just in the process of editing it. And yeah, see you soon, guys, and take care. Bye.